Welcome. This is ENG 328, Study Session 11. Masisi Kunene, Traditional Aesthetic Ideology. Introduction. Kunene's poetry is based on a profound understanding of the mores, culture and cosmology of an African nation, the Zulu. For Kunene, the utilization of traditional material involved a careful study of the Zulu literary tradition, Zulu literary forms and effects of colonialism and the Christian religion on Zulu literary forms. In focusing on Zulu traditions, Kunene does not degenerate into narrow-mindedness and ethnicity. He does not write as a Zulu who is unaware of Africa. In this study session, you will learn about his works. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to situate Kunene's attempt to reconcile the worldview and linguistic repertoire of a traditional society with the resistance struggles against oppression. 2. Describe the effectiveness of traditional materials in Kunene's poetry. Review of Kunene's poetry. A poet, or for that matter any creative writer, cannot contrive his subject matter or themes. He must know what he is writing about. If he does not, he will come up with something unnatural, unrealistic and downright phony. Only a Jewish poet can write about bar mitzvah. Only an Afrikaner's poet can describe nagmail. A typical black man can tell how he slaughters a black goat for his ancestors. Poetry is a language of emotions. Only words can convey the meaning of this language to the heart, where emotions are said to be situated. These emotions are only existent in human beings, with the result that creatures other than Homo sapiens are said to be devoid of love, hate, fear, despair, and hope. Consequently, every person should, because he has emotions, understand and appreciate poetry. Otherwise, he is no different from a brute or a stone. Like people all over the world, black people of South Africa have emotions. They love, they hate, and they fear, they despair, they aspire. For too long, they have been muffled by unfounded fears which cannot be suppressed anymore, though there have been real fears of being lynched, murdered, and imprisoned if they dared raise their voices to what they know for a long time to be wrong and expected to be righted. Their fears have been compounded by the teachings of missionaries about heaven and hell. Acceptance of the injustice perpetrated in their lives will be rewarded with heavenly bliss, and the opposition of this oppression will lead to perditions they were taught to believe. Of course, now they have been through this in the light of these realities as inherent in South Africa, that we shall examine the poetry of Kunene Masisi, who is committed to the use of oral tradition in proffering remedies through artistic means to the harsh reality in South Africa. According to Kunene, oral literature constantly projects the examples of socially desirable actions, making series of those who uphold the highest communal values and villains of those who violate them. Its strategy is therefore to be effective immediately and to be of immediate application. To maintain its interest, oral literature of necessity links itself with various social, political, and religious events. Any gathering becomes a fit place. Its expression, be it a work party, a circumcision school, a diviners get together, a family reunion, a dance, a feast, a festival, an evening gathering by the fireside, or a shepherd's gathering. The participation of the community is an essential part of a literature that is not only live, but also communal in its intent. 1976 to 32. The communal quality secularizes the literature and makes accessible what will otherwise be a highly moralistic or didactic literature. The fact that is based on concrete social and historical events bring closer to everyday morality and action. It deals with the ethnical challenges of things that can be achieved and therefore becomes more than a litany of superhuman ideals. To Kunene, the Zulu thought is seen as representative of African thought. In Zulu poems, he uses traditional modes of thinking and expression without advocating a return to the past, nor does he necessarily glorify the past like the Senghorian school of negritude. On the contrary, Kunene's writing is preoccupied by dialectical thinking. This poetry portrays a world which is constantly advancing to a higher state, and this partly accounts for the strong element of optimism that runs through the poem on resistance to apartheid. Amongst Kunene's collections are Anthem of the Decades, a Zulu epic, 1979, and a second collection of short poems, The Ancestors and the Sacred Mountains, Imperial Shaka the Great, a Zulu epic, 1979. Kunene is as a poet that prides himself in Zulu philosophy and culture. This will exemplified in a few of these poems randomly selected from some of the earlier mentioned collections. These include In Praise of the Hearts, Stages of Existence, The Bound, and Three Worlds. In this poem, Kunene explores the cosmology of the Zulu people, their attitude to moral issues, social relations, death, and other related issues. Kunene uses Zulu beliefs and cosmology to articulate and propagate his own personal philosophy in life. Zulu traditional literature and thought are therefore used to illuminate the present and the future. In Zulu poems, there is no advocacy of a return to the past, no sentimentalization or idealization of the past. An interesting example of how Kunene uses traditional material to project his own ideals in Zulu poems is Anthem of Decades, which dramatizes the Zulu creation myths. The belly of the heart split open, releasing animals that crawls on the hearth, and others that drum their hoots on the ground. The lion roared, thundering the fruit fair. Other beasts less ferocious stirred, until, aware of the satisfying taste of blood, joined in the general carriage. So the lesson was learnt. Life must continue, and good things must feed the ruthlessness of appetites. Kunene admits in the introduction to the collection that not everything in Anthem of Decades is taken from the Zulu creation myth. According to him, I have used the story of the origin of life. He says, and added my own detailed description according to the dictates of Zulu culture. 1970 to 41. It's important to note that while Kunene may have been influenced by the Christian story, Kunene has been careful not to introduce into his poem elements that are deviously alien to Zulu culture. The idea of good and evil does not appear as such. I have not, however, presented Songwas as the devil, since such a concept does not exist in traditional Zulu thought. What matters most there is that Kunene's might fit into modern thinking. Kunene sees the world as a being in a constant state of motion, progressing from lower to higher levels of existence. His words is not a static one. It is characterized by dialectical materialism. This philosophy permeates Kunene's thinking. At this stage of his career, we can summarize Kunene's authorial ideology in Zulu poems as that of an Afrocentric, optimistic and dialectical thinker who utilizes Zulu culture and traditional thought to give expression to his own vision. This is well delineated by those poems that deal with what may be called themes of resistance. In the scripts, I offer you screams of 1,000 madmen who scream to those without mercy, who scream over the graveyards of skeletons piled on pole, bones dislocated from their joints. I offer you the cloth that is torn in the middle, left in the field by those who departed before the children were weaned from the breast. Tell me, who wore it before the fall of winter? The theme of resistance falls into three categories. First, Kunene's response to European culture and ideology. Secondly, resistance to oppression in South Africa in an indirect, almost allegorical ways, using the traditional idiom and those that portray the theme of resistance more directly. In the modern idiom, the first category consists of very few poems, the best ones being Europe and the Civilization of Iron. The one titled Europe begins with a celebration. Europe, your foundations are laid on a rough stone. Your heart is like cobweb. They are dry in the desert. The basic idea in the poem is clear. The hard-heartedness and complete lack of warmth of Europe. It is this hard-heartedness which led Europe to choose the bridegroom of steel. In the other poem, steel is associated with bold and violent diabolism. I saw them in their long procession, rushing to worship images of steel. They crushed the intestines of children until their tongues fell out. I saw iron with sharp hands, embracing infants into the flames. They wandered on the roads, preaching the religion of iron, pregnant with those of blood and milk. In the poem, Europe's the post like other African intelligentsia who had went through a period in which Europe ideals were accepted without questions. But now, once I believed the tales, once I believed you had breast, overflowing with milk. Like other African poets, Kunene expresses his romance with African cultural values against the entrenched European ones. The other category, where Kunene employs the traditional ideal to convey deeper meaning which has relevance to the contemporary situation in South Africa. Peace, stages of existence, the spectacle of youth, a great generation, thoughts at the gathering of the storm. In the spectacle of youth, youthful embrace is compared with the kingly boldness of a lion, which can confront any kind of opposition and oppression. The youthful skill is compared with those of the transitional and ancient heroes, Shaka, who fought with gallantry during their lifetime. I love the children of the lion, when their manes were beginning to grow, simulating the ancient heroes. I knew the greatness of their future, when they leaped on the tender rocks of antelopes, which so long prided themselves on their fleetness. I praise the skillfulness of their power, knowing how soon they will be killing buffaloes. The images of mans, which in itself stands for authority and unchallengeable prowess, is used to exalt the youthful personalities against oppressive domination. The poem is more like an indictment meant to spur the Zulu youths into ardent nationalism and anti-colonialist tendencies. In another poem, Stages of Existence, the protagonist uses rainbow to tie the art so that it gives birth. Two sets of images contend with each other on the rainbow. First, E, the faces of old women, who raise their heavy eyes like the shadows of magical figures. These are symbols of the past. When it tries the art, another set of images come out. Beyond the red boundaries is the new lightning of children, who will grow above the shadows of old women. When they have conquered them, they may rest and create new forms that inspired new life, making knots for eternity, from which new generations will arise. The past will be conquered and a new generation will arise. This becomes a recurrent theme in A Great Generation, a dramatic poem in 3 voices, centers on 2 characters, Mathungo and Bekane, who left home, promising to return the following day, but have now taken too long to come back. The poem alludes to the South African liberation struggle. The 2 characters, Mathungo and Bekane, represent the new generation of fighters who left the country and have taken long to come back. This is a way of expressing the ideas of a protracted liberation struggle, but optimism is expressed in the minds of the majority of the people, symbolized by the voice of Hall. In Vengeance, Kunene employs an oral technique in which the speaker uses rhetorical questions to address an enemy. The poem is a dialogue in which the protagonist gives vent to his indignation at the injustice of the enemy. How will it be if I came in the night and planted the spear in your side, avenging the dead, those who have not known, those whose scars are hidden, those about whom there is no memorial, those you only remembered in your celebration? According to E. Ngara, the search for the link between humanity and the cosmos, a theme which is explored in a number of poems. All this serves to show that Kunene is a philosophical poet who is guided by a particular conception of the interrelatedness of tradition, humanity, and the universe. It also indicates a new idealism in the second anthology, which one does not feel in the first. 1990, Ditto 87. The salient point, however, is that Kunene has developed a distinctive style through which all these themes are explored. The style is a direct product of the author's committed interest in Zulu culture and cosmology. The poetry is replete with images of the planets and the constellations, sun, moon, earth, stars, and sky. According to Kunene, again according to the Zulu cultural tradition, the moon, the sun, and the stars are physical phenomena which primarily express the nature of distance and the quality of light, while also being symbolic of physical power. 1981, Ditto 12. Study session summary. Kunene's contribution to African poetry is substantial, particularly if we take into account the 2 epics. The importance of his contribution lies in his attempt to reconcile the world view and linguistic repertoire of a traditional society and with the structures and rhythms of foreign language, which he is using to convey the concerns and hopes of a modern and complex society. His method is faulted with certain loopholes of overgeneralization, but his aesthetic ideology is encouraging. We have come to the end of study session 11. Thanks for listening.